It's here. We made it. We have hockey to talk about. The Blue Jackets rookie tournament is today. So we're going to break that down on today's Locked on Blue Jackets.
You're Locked on Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked on Blue Jackets, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team, and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get into that, I want to thank you for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked on Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. I also have to let you know this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is right around the corner, so visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now. We're going to talk about the prospect tournament today. The roster was released yesterday afternoon, I believe. Obviously, one fairly glaring omission from it. Luca Marrelli, who is very injured because of course he is. So we're going to talk about the roster. We're going to talk about guys that need to stand out, guys that need to have big rookie tournaments, like who's going to be the Kent Johnson this year, right? Who just absolutely exploded in his, I think, second rookie tournament. First or second, I can never remember which one. And we're going to talk about the loss of Luca Marrelli, who, obviously is not the be-all and end-all of the prospect pool, but did figure to be a reasonable sized piece of the Cleveland Monsters blue line this season. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But it's here. We made it. We've got hockey to talk about, or hockey to preview. Tomorrow we'll have hockey to talk about, which is going to be very exciting. The Blue Jackets are facing off, or the Baby Blue Jackets are going to be playing the New Jersey Devils tonight at 7 p.m. Saturday, they're going to be playing the Buffalo Sabres, and then Sunday afternoon, they're going to be playing the Pittsburgh Penguins. So, a little bit different. I think this is their second year at the Buffalo tournament and not at Traverse City, which I believe finally died a death this year and is not happening after teams kind of slowly, one by one, left it. But it should be good. There's a lot of players coming for the Blue Jackets that I am really, really interested in. What are we going to see from them, right? Like, you've got, and I'll go through the roster in a second, but like, you've got, your big names. You've got your Luca Pinelli, your Charlie Ehrlich, your Evan Gardner, but like, what's Oiva Keskinen going to look like in this tournament? What's John Dumais going to look like in this tournament? One guy that I'm really interested to see is Guillaume Richard, who I think is going to be kind of a sleeper pick to be not necessarily a standout, but to be an effective player at this tournament. So to kind of summarize, there are 23 players, 8 draft picks by the Blue Jackets, Charlie Ehrlich, Evan Gardner, Owen Griffin, drafted just this year, Luca Pinelli, Oiva Keskinen, and Tyler Peddle from the 2023 draft. Peddle's an interesting one because he was drafted by the Blue Jackets and then his rights expired, so he's not technically like belonging to the Blue Jackets right now, but he's still got an invite to camp, which I think is really interesting. And I wonder if that's because his dad works for the organization. And, I would never accuse hockey of nepotism, but I do wonder if that's why he's here as kind of a last ditch. No, he's like, there's something there, we promise, type player. And then John Dumais, Guillaume Richard, those are your draft picks. And then they also have Caleb McDonald, Jack Williams, Max McHugh, and Nolan Lalonde, who all signed entry-level contracts with the club. They were not drafted by the team, but they have been given contracts. So, the Max McHugh was a free agent out of the OHL. Nolan Lalonde also out of the OHL. Jack Williams out of the NCAA most recently. And Caleb McDonald, I believe, also out of the NCAA. I'm gonna fact check myself real quick. But so that's what 12 of the 23 players are Blue Jackets quote unquote property, right? Which feels low, But these kind of tournaments are just kind of like that. This is the wrong Caleb McDonald on Instagram on Elite Prospects. It's fine. But the point I'm making here is, before I get too deep in the Google, the Blue Jackets have, what did I say, 12 players are quote unquote club property. Which it feels weird to say that, which means they've got 11 invites, which is always a fun kind of, you could sneak a made-up name onto this, which is maybe mean of me, but so other guys that are going to be here: Josh Avery, Ryder Bolton, Brendan Hoffman, Ryland Mosley, Nicholas Seamer, who I believe is a repeat. I believe he's returning. Evan Van Gorp, which is a great name. Will Bishop, Jakub Kromiak, PJ Hagan, Marcus Kersey, and goaltender Mason Vichari. So couple of guys missing there that I kind of maybe expected. I was really impressed with at the last prospect tournament. I was really impressed with Pamo Finis of I believe he was with the Oshawa Generals. He was in the OHL, I know that, and you know he got an invite to training camp on the back of having such a strong rookie tournament, or prospect tournament, I should say, and also Jacob Oster, who I liked a lot in last year's prospect tournament. Now, again, it's kind of like this is mostly just to fill the gaps, right? Because obviously there's a bunch of notable guys missing, and when I say notable guys, I mean notable Blue Jackets prospect, right? There's no Jackson Smith, there's no Caden Lindstrom, there's no Pyotr Andrianov, there's no, like, basically anyone who is not North American based or is at college is not going to be there. And the Blue Jackets, a lot of their bigger prospects are either Russian or in college, which the college season started, or like the training, etc., started a couple of weeks ago. Games, I believe, start this weekend. I could be wrong about that. But so the college guys can't be there, which is kind of a shame. But it does mean that we are going to get really good looks at, I think Charlie Alec is going to be a really interesting name to look at, because he's a guy that there's a lot of potential, but there's also a lot of question marks in his game, I think. I was really interested in seeing what Luca Marrelli looked like and seeing how he performed. He kind of was playing the OHL on easy mode last season, so I was really interested to see what he looked like against. Typically, an NHL prospect roster is stronger than the average, like, major junior roster, right? So I was interested to see how he looked, but we'll talk about Morelli in a minute here. But there's the missing of the big names, quote unquote, will give guys like Charlie Alec. Again, Oiva Keskinen is a name that I keep coming back to, of a guy that I've seen basically nothing of, but I know that the organization is very high on him. He was I believe a 7th round. He was a 4th or a 7th round draft pick. I'm getting my Finns mixed up here. He was a 7th round draft pick, yeah. And I basically couldn't find anyone to talk about him ever. When he was drafted by the Blue Jackets, there was a little bit of chatter, but just a real kind of, hey, let's just throw a draft pick at this guy, right? And then he had a really strong rookie season in the Liga, 27 points in 54 games as a 19-year-old, I believe. 9 points in 16 playoff games that year as well. Tapera, I believe, won the Liga that year. This year continued a strong play, 35 points in 59 games, and is coming over and is going to be a Cleveland monster. So he's definitely a guy that I'm looking at, not in terms of I think he's going to have a huge tournament, but in terms of, this is a guy that no one really knew anything about, and it looks like he has really put the work in, and is going to be a real question mark, and I mean that in a positive way. He is the Monsters lost a lot of guys this offseason. They need new guys, and Keskinen's going to be one of them, and I think he's a guy that I'm really interested, just because, again, like, he's of the Blue Jackets that we'll distinguish between the Blue Jackets, not the camp invites, So, either the draft picks or the entry-level signed guys, like Keskinen's the guy that I've seen the least of, so I am the most excited to see what we've got with Keskinen. So that feels like a really good way to lead into what I want to talk about next, which is who needs to stand out this weekend, right? Because there are guys here that have some AHL experience. There are some guys here that are just kind of breaking into the pros. There are guys that were just drafted and want to have a really good first impression with, the fans, etc., playing in that Blue Jackets jersey. So who needs to stand out? And who has the most kind of riding on this being a really, really solid tournament weekend for the Blue Jackets? We'll talk about that in a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I'm going to tell you about Game Time. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize that you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Game Time comes in. It is the easiest way to grab last minute tickets without any of the stress. And with the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, anything you want. Game Time makes all that possible. It's fast, it's simple. Prices drop the closer you get to the first pitch, and they've got incredible last minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. I am keeping more than 1.5 eyes on Game Time at the minute. I'm going to be in Montreal for a couple of weeks. We're going to go to a Habs preseason game, and you better believe I will be using Game Time for my tickets. It is so easy to use. Like it's just way more intuitive than basically any other ticketing app out there. And what I love the most is that it shows you the view from your seat before you buy. So you know exactly where you're going to be. You know if it's going to be a good view or not. If it's a rink that you've never been to, you don't know what the sight lines are like. You don't know if you're going to be a million miles away from the ice or the baseball diamond or whatever, right? Game Time takes all that away from you and just gives you great deals on tickets without any guesswork. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. We're talking about the prospect tournament in Buffalo this weekend. We've talked about kind of the roster, who's going to be there. And so I want to talk about some guys that I think will stand out and guys that need to stand out, right? Because for me, there's a couple of there's 3 or 4 names that I want to kind of go through here in varying degrees of, let's say, urgency. I think that it is. I would love to see, for example, Evan Gardner have a good tournament. I think that there is a ton of potential there. We love goalies on this show. I'm always happy to talk about goalies forever. But I think that he is a guy that is really going to have to stay present to stay at the top of the goalie depth pool, right? Because the Blue Jackets have a ton of goalies, and it's really easy to get lapped in that prospect pool, right? You only really have room for 2 goalies at a time. If you fall down to like the 3rd most important goalie in the prospect pool, then it's kind of game over, right? And I do think that's Evan Gardner is probably sitting 2 or 3. Right? So he needs to have a good prospect tournament, needs to remind the team that he's still an option. I know that the team is extremely high on Andrianov. I think there's something with Ivanov as well. Like Melvin Strahl is still there. Like, again, they have a bunch of goalies, right? So Evan Gardner, I don't think it's like super urgent in terms of like his future with the team is in jeopardy if he has a bad tournament, but I do think that if he has a good tournament, it's going to put him in extremely good stead for getting a nice long look at training camp, even though he's almost certainly going back to Saskatoon to play for the Blades for at least one more season, and I think just to kind of again remind the team that yes, he's not the biggest goalie in the world, but he's got that dog in him, right? And I think he needs to show that this weekend. On the flip side, a player that I do think it is a little bit more urgent for, Jordan Dumais. Jordan Dumais was a 3rd-round draft pick that scored at an insane rate in the QMJHL, a league that it is and I recognize that I say this as someone who played beer league and no higher. It is an easy league to kind of rack up points in if you have if you have a good shot, right, you can really take advantage of that. It is a lot harder to score in the OHL, the WHL, the NCAA, etc. He then had a bunch of injury issues. I believe ended up getting like double hip surgery, which at the age of 19 or 20 has got to be rough. There was that incident where he was arrested for driving under the influence. Got suspended by the team. Kind of finished his QMJHL career like a little bit in disgrace, right? Comes to Columbus, comes to Cleveland, injured. Not the most sparkling rookie season of all time for Jordan Dumais, and it's a lot of the prospect guys that I talk to have concerns about his projectability in terms of, yes, he was a great player in the QMJHL, but the kind of game that he plays is not going to fly in the AHL, the NHL, whatever, right? So I think he's one of the older players in this on this roster. He's the oldest Blue Jackets affiliated player. He was drafted in the second oldest. Guillaume Richard is 1 year older. Jordan Dumais was drafted all the way back in 2022. So we're getting into it's been 3 seasons since he was drafted, and this is typically when you want your prospects, your lower down prospects. He was the 3rd round draft pick. You typically want them to start taking steps forward around about now, right? You want 3 to 5 years. You're like, okay, this is when you should start to see what you have in this prospect, right? So he is not necessarily on his last chance, but if he doesn't show out at this tournament, he's one of the oldest players. He's one of the most experienced players. He's got, half a season of pro hockey under his belt already, give or take, which very few Blue Jackets on this roster do. I think he might be the only one, not counting Ivor Keskinen, who's always been playing pro hockey for 2 years, but of the North Americans, I believe he's the only one that's got more than like 4 or 5 games of pro experience of the Blue Jackets group. Max McHugh as well, I guess, who I believe played a full-ish season with the Monsters, but we're not looking at Max McHugh to be an option in the NHL. I'm not anyway. Jordan Dumais was looked at to be a potential NHL option, and I think that chance he's getting lapped by he's getting lapped by a lot of the younger players that have a similar archetype to Jordan Dumais, but have a little bit more projectability. So, for example, a guy, Owen Griffin, is a very similar player, undersized, goal scorer, had a great playoffs in the OHL with Oshawa just now. He's probably going to lap Jordan Dumais in terms of depth in this organization if Dumais not careful, right? And that is probably, the beginning of the end. If you're getting lapped by an 18-year-old 5th round draft pick, then it's not a great sign. Maybe he'll surprise us. I know that there was some kind of chatter about immaturity issues, or he still feels like a very young player. And I'm not saying that there was issues with coachability or anything like that, but I do think that this season was a struggle for him in more way than one. So I would love to see him really show up in this tournament. And hopefully he can use that to kind of jump off of that onto, okay, strong training camp with the Blue Jackets, Monsters training camp. Let's have a good, solid second pro season with the Monsters and then go from there. Because there's goal scoring there. There's a player there. They just have to figure out how to find him in all of the noise, right? A couple of the players, I talked a little bit about Charlie Ellick already, but he's a guy that I'm interested to watch because, again, a lot of potential, great skater, big body, questionable decision making. I think I'm really interested to see what he does with the puck on his stick in a non-goal scoring way. Which is maybe a really convoluted way of saying that, but he will just occasionally do the Damon Severson thing, right? Of just kind of launching the puck in a random direction, almost like the puck is possessed for just a split second, right? So I want to see if he's worked on that over the summer for example, because it's not a make or break thing, right? A young player can learn better decision making if he puts in the work. So I'm really interested to see what Charlie Alec looks like in this tournament. And then I think you all know who the other guy that I'm interested in looking at is Luca Pinelli. Luca Pinelli, my guess is that he's going to wear the C for this tournament. I think it'll be well deserved. He's another player that's got that dog in him, right? He is a guy that the organization is extremely high on. Played a handful of games for Cleveland at the end of the season. I know Trent Vogelhuber was just really, really endeared by Pinelli's attitude, by his compete level, all of these intangibles that coaches love. He's very easy to work with, is what I've heard. So I am really hoping that Luca Pinelli basically blows the doors off this tournament. And it's not like the cool, interesting pick. It's a really boring, safe pick to be like, yeah, I think Luca Pinelli is going to have a really good tournament, but I think Luca Pinelli is going to have a really good tournament, and I'm not sorry about it. Unfortunately, we are down to only one Luca. Del Baluz has graduated full-time, and Luca Marrelli had surgery, I think, literally earlier this week, and it's going to be out till December. So that sucks for a bunch of reasons, but I wanted to talk about that a little bit more, and we'll do that in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I've got to tell you about FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel. It fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay. That's my personal favorite. I love to put, like, $1 on 3 really stupid things happening. If it comes through, I get like $30,000. It's maybe not the smartest way to bet, but it is my favorite, and I love that FanDuel lets me do that. And you can even jump in live as the action unfolds as well. It makes every game just a little bit more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's the best way to add a little more energy to those game day Sundays. You ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. We're going to finish off real quick. I want to talk about Luca Marrelli, who was a guy that I had, like I said at the beginning of the show, had kind of picked him as a player to watch in this tournament, and really kind of surprising news to hear that he's out until December. Had to get surgery on a torn labrum, which, of course, he did. It's the Blue Jackets. I believe they are one torn labrum away from like filling their stamp card and getting a free torn labrum surgery. I don't understand how this keeps happening. It is so frustrating. And like, again, it sucks to have surgery so young. It sucks that you're going to be out until December. Again, I feel like this happened last season as well, not with the labrum, but Gavin Brindley broke his hand in training camp and missed the first chunk of the season and really struggled to kind of get it going when he, I think that's why he had a kind of a lackluster rookie season with the Blue Jackets. John DeMay, who we just talked about, missed a chunk of the season because he got injured or was still not healthy from off-season surgery by the time the season started. And now, again, Luca Marrelli, who I had kind of put into the top 6, potentially probably the top 4, for the Monsters defense this season. Again, the Monsters defense is kind of wobbly. And it's wobblier now that Marrelli is out. But he was, like I said, he was a guy that I was really, really interested to see at this tournament. Was great in the OHL this season, like especially offensively. I think that there's questions about his effectiveness in his own zone. He is definitely a more offensively minded defenseman. He's very much everything happens all the time when Marrelli is on the ice, right? Like he is a very high activity is a good way to put it, I think. A guy that is constantly moving, constantly looking to do something, constantly trying to do this or that. And, that's something that I think you get a lot with like young offensive defensemen, right? And it's they'll tire themselves out and they'll figure out that they can't go Tasmanian Devil style for the entire game, right? And again, that's just something that you'll kind of learn. But I was interested to see how he responded to what is a more kind of pro-heavy coaching style in this tournament, because Trevor Ogelhuber going to be coaching the Baby Blue Jacket, which I love. I love that they send the AHL coaches to do this, and I love that I'm a big Trevor Ogelhuber fan. You know this about me. That is a Locked On Blue Jackets bingo square, I think, is when I talk about how much I enjoy watching Trent Ogelhuber coach. But Marrelli was a guy that I was, again, like really excited to see. And it kind of sucks that he's not going to be in this tournament and also not going to be on the Monsters until at least December. You know, and like it wasn't a given that he was going to be a Monster, but he's old enough. He turns 20 in just under a month, so he could have stayed in Oshawa, but I think that he and the team decided that probably when you score 74 points in 67 regular season games as a defenseman, and then do 36 points in 21 games in the playoffs, probably you can take that next step, right? So he was going to be on the Monsters, and again, when I go to look at the Cleveland Monsters roster, which lost a lot of guys, and you know the roster is still under construction in that way that the AHL is, but there's not a lot. There's just not a lot there. So there was a real opportunity for Marrelli to come in and be that guy, you know. And I'm not going to say that he was going to have like a Denton Matejchuk style season, but there was a real opportunity, you know. Like again, I'm looking at the roster right now, and there's a lot of names on the roster here. You got Olin Ulick, Bjork Home, you got Corson Ceulemans, Damon Hunt, Christian Yaros, Kayla McDonald, Will McKinnon, who's a new face, Dyson Mayo, who I believe was with Vegas last season, Guillaume Richard, and Stanislav Svozil. Like those are your signed defensemen. Luca Marrelli should be in the top 4, right? Like when I look at this, I'm like, okay, well, it's going to be Svozil, probably Hunt, and then beyond that, there's a real kind of like Yaros and Mayo are veterans, so I don't know quite what's going to go on there. Will McKinnon, I believe, counts as a veteran as well, and then everyone else is 23 or under. There was a real opportunity for Luca Marrelli to kind of come in and be that top 4 defenseman, and really kind of again put his mark on a team that doesn't have a lot of game breaking defensemen. And I don't think he was going to be a game breaker necessarily, but there was, like I said, there was a real option for him there, and it's really disappointing that he's going to miss, not quite half the season, but he's going to miss a big chunk of it, right? And he's probably not going to get his rookie season is probably going to end up being a little bit lackluster because of this. Because again, we saw this last season, Brindley and DeMay both really struggled in their first pro season because they got injured and missed the start of it. You throw them in December, in January, whenever, and they kind of have to hit the ground running. And if they stumble, then it's kind of game over. So I don't know what we're going to see from Luca Marrelli when he's fully healthy. But I am downgrading my expectations for him this season, which again is unfortunate because my expectations for him were really quite high. Unfortunately, I should know better. This is the Blue Jackets, and torn labrums are handed out like Halloween candy. So another victim of the Elmo balloon in the rafters at Nationwide. That being said, overall, I'm really looking forward to this prospect tournament, and I don't know whether that's just because I haven't seen Blue Jacket hockey in what feels like a million years, or what it is. But I'm really excited for this prospect tournament. I think that the Blue Jackets have a really good chance to do well in it. Like the teams that they're playing are not. They're not typically considered like the upper echelon of prospect pools. They're not like the Bruins, for example, but like Penguins have some really interesting prospects. New Jersey is kind of in a similar place of Columbus, of a lot of their big prospect guys have kind of aged out, and are kind of it's the the second and third and fourth round picks that are kind of making their way in right now. Buffalo, I have no idea what to expect from Buffalo. Could go either way, but the Blue Jackets should have a pretty solid showing at this tournament. So we'll cover all of it. We'll cover every last bit of it. And that's what I'm going to do tomorrow. Tomorrow I am going to talk about tonight's game. I'm going to talk about who I liked, who I didn't like, guys that impressed me, guys that I want to see more from, surprises, all of that good stuff. Thank you for listening to this episode, making it your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets continues to be free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. I have been Jay Foster. You can find me on Blue Sky at JAKOBFORSTER. You can find the show at LO_Blue Jackets on Twitter. And thank you once again for listening. Until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.